He doesn't miss a big moment.
No.
We saw you standing next to Jed York like a big muckety muck yesterday there, Tim.
Yeah, apparently a lot of people saw that.
Yeah.
It was me and Jed together. That's what it was. It was kind of our joint press conference there. We decided that we had to say some things. It's just hilarious what people react to. Like, I'm just there talking to him afterwards, but people seem to react to my reactions to Jed York. That was the big news.
Yeah.
Of my
I thought you had great balance with your phone, the way you held it. You stepped back. I thought you had good elegance, good poise. It was well done, Tim.
That's how you do it, man. The interviews, there's a style to interviews. It's just hilarious. It's funny. It's a group session. You're trying to just make sure you're in there. And I was not asking that many questions because I was going to talk to him afterwards. So people may view it as they view it, but that's the inside look at us standing around talking to Jed York.
Perfect. There it is. Tim Kawakami joining us on the Boxer and Gerson guest line here on Willard and Dibs. What'd you make of it, though, Tim? Jed doesn't talk a lot. So this is both a question of why did he choose to speak now, and what did you make of what he chose to talk about?
Well, he's talked before every Super Bowl in different, like in New Orleans way back when. He talked during the week. The last Super Bowl 4 years ago, he talked to the same kind of thing. He dropped in the media room the week before. So this is kind of standard. You know, there's requests for him. I had put a request in for him. I'm sure I was by far not the only one. So like John Lynch talked today. Obviously, John talks more than Jed, but you kind of run your guys through the week before, and instead of backing everything up into this crazy week coming up in Las Vegas. So there was no surprise he's talking then. And it's a good time to talk. You know, he is at time. He told me, like, he was on my podcast I think last year. He doesn't want everyone to look at him like, hey, you're doing something. No, it's Kyle Shanahan and it's John Lynch. You kind of get that approach. He's around. You can see him, but this is a good time for him to kind of like, what's happened here? What do you think's been successful? You look back on some failures. I talked to him, of course, about Jim Harbaugh, just the coincidence of Harbaugh having his intro presser at almost the same time that Jed was talking yesterday. Just kind of, he runs this place. He's the one who hired Kyle Shanahan. He's the one who's signed off on all these moves. I think it was a good time to have him talk about that a little bit. As he's the owner, he can say some things that other people can't say about how, Shanahan told him early in training camp last year that their young last pick of the draft was actually their best quarterback. That hasn't actually been said like that by anybody. Kyle Shanahan has kind of hinted at that. He strongly hinted that to me beginning of this year, but the owner can go ahead and just say it. Other things that I think there was perspective out of Jed that maybe it's been developed over the years. There's kind of he didn't say we have to win, or the whole thing's over with. He had some, context, some patience. And I think that's the bigger picture here. Like, you didn't get here by your crazy moves. You got here by your calm, thoughtful, kind of thought out things. And that included, finding your way to Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch. It took a while, right? I fired Jim Harbaugh and ended up with Jim Tomsula. That did not work out. Then that led to Chip Kelly. That did not work out. And kind of through that process, learning process, painful process, whatever it was, all those things, he got to the right place. He got to Kyle Shanahan. He got to John Lynch. This is their second Super Bowl they've been together. Maybe it's their first championship. We'll see. But it's not terrible for the owner to talk about this. Right now, kind of away from the super glare of what's going to happen. You don't necessarily want to see 1,000 media people in Vegas. You kind of want to do it in front of the local people that and that's what that was yesterday.
Is part of what he went through what has led him to be less vocal and less omnipresent in terms of being a vocal owner?
Yeah, I mean, you have to hire the right people, right? I mean, he was popping up all the time because he had announced firings, and then he had announced a hiring, and then he announced the firing, 11 months later. You don't want to be that visible because you're coming out and it's always, in terms of failures, in terms of restart, in terms of here's what we got wrong and here's how we'll do it better. You hire the right people, and, you don't always know you're going to. It turns out they did finally with Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch. And then you don't need to say as much because guess what? They're the ones running it. They're the ones speaking, about what they've done, explaining what they've done and where they want to go. You hire them to do that stuff. Now, I think the owner should check in sometimes. I think we should hear from the owner for the big picture stuff. Not all the time, but some of the times. But the main people who are talking, who are explaining, who are doing stuff are the general manager and the head coach. And when you hire the right people, the owner does not need to speak that much. I mean, again, I always appreciate when the owner speaks. I always appreciate when Joe Lacob speaks, believe me. But this is set up, this franchise is set up for John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan to speak for the team, and they are the ones who do.
Tim Kawakami with us, Willard and Dibs. You've been down there talking to everyone, gaining perspective after these 2 playoff games. So, Tim, I want your perspective. What's up with the defense?
It's not playing that good. They have played really well when they've needed to, but the yards, especially the rushing yards, has been, I think, a shock to them. It's been a surprise to, I think, all of us who follow this team. They have been a very good run defense over the years, recent years at least, and they gave it up to Detroit for sure. I think there's some issues on the perimeter for sure. I think Talanoa Hufanga's injury, now I hadn't really thought about that, but there's a run stopper, that safety who is a run stopper, who fills the right lane at the right time. They don't have that. I don't think Gibson and Jair Brown and or Logan Ryan have played poorly, but we've all seen the replays. There's been some missed angles that may have changed the 15-yard gain into a 50-yard gain maybe, or an 8-yard gain into a 20-yard gain. That doesn't always happen with Hufanga, or maybe that's even a forced fumble. I think Chase Young instead of Cleveland Ferrell, which has happened late because of Ferrell's injury, has been a difference for sure. And, just a couple little things maybe because they're not dominant. They're just, solid. And then you take a couple pieces of that and you add lesser pieces and you go against teams that are game planning brilliantly, as Detroit did on the 49ers. Then you maybe have some issues. So I just think that there's, it's not been the team that we've seen over the years, but it's also not the same players maybe is part of it, at least 2 of them. And the guys are out there just have to play better. There's been some moments where they have not played extra hard, and that's surprising. And they're talking about that this week. That's just not, as John Lynch says, non-negotiable. Effort is non-negotiable. And it's been negotiable for a couple plays, a couple huge plays recently. That's just part of a team that had a defensive unit for sure that has not played as well as it should. If it doesn't play very well in the Super Bowl, I think the Chiefs are going to win. It's just simple as that. I think they know it. We don't know what's the result's going to be, but I think what's good about this game for them, good or bad, is that they know they have to play their premium game. They cannot play a B- C+ game, and I think they've played B or C games in the NFC playoffs, which is amazing that they've gotten through it, but playing by far not their best, and that's offensively and defensively. Brock Purdy rolls out, a span like he did in the first half of the last game or most of the previous game, 49ers probably lose. If they give up 180 yards rushing like they did Detroit, the 49ers probably lose. If they don't get a couple big plays out of Christian McCaffrey, they probably lose. They know all these things. You hate to say that you need this motivation in the playoffs, but maybe they weren't exactly razor sharp the last 2. They won anyway. That's good for them to know. It's good to know that they could come back. It's good to know that this is not a team that panics. It's got some culture. It's got some, understanding of what it takes. But they know that this happens. They go down 24-7 to Patrick Mahomes, they're going to lose. I don't think I have little doubt about that. And if they have any doubt about that, I'm sure that was erased by any film session they've had so far this week.
Yeah, and if you give up 24 to Kansas City, you're doing it wrong because their offense has not been that dynamic. So offensively, though, Tim, for the Niners, how do they go about penetrating a very good Kansas City defense?
Well, the Kansas City defense is good. I think it's better than the one that beat the 49ers 4 years ago, but it does give up some running yards. And that's the surprise of the Ravens game, was that they did not try it more because the Ravens are a pretty good running team. Obviously, with Lamar, they're a great running when he's set loose. 49ers are going to run the ball. I think that, again, has been part of the weirdness of the last 2 games, is that they've run it here and there. They haven't been terrible running it, but they certainly haven't controlled the game running the ball, which is always the Kyle Shanahan goal. You run the ball, and then you play action pass over the top. They have not been able to get to that because they're just not chewing out those 6-yard, 8-yard gains. They popped a few, but they have not been consistent running the ball. they're going to do that or going to try to do that against the Chiefs. I don't know that they're going to drop back and throw it 40 times and win this game. Not with the way the Chiefs pass defense is playing, not the way that pass rush is playing. So I think they attack it by the old Kyle Shanahan standby. Maybe 49er fans don't love it, but you win the game that you're supposed to win by winning with a running game. And if they can, stopping the run. Those two things. I thought that was going to be the key to the entire postseason. It has not been because they've been outrushed in these two games and still won. But the Chiefs with Patrick Mahomes, it just feels like you try to deflate the game. They did it 4 years ago, right? For 3.5 quarters. They played Mahomes great, by the way. I think it was a better 49er defense in 19 than it is now, but some similar players. I think you try to run hard, get first downs, move the chains, put pressure on Mahomes. I think the 49ers pass defense came up to defending Mahomes. We shall see. And you win it with the running game. You know, Christian McCaffrey, I think, is probably the most important player in this game. And, might be able to, win this game almost by himself. Just by having McCaffrey gives you an advantage over a lot of other teams.
Tim Kawakami, know you got to run real quick before you go. A few weeks ago, you told us there was almost definitely going to be some sort of a Warriors trade. Has your thinking changed?
Yeah, I think I'll say as of that moment, that's what I thought. Some things have changed, specifically the Draymond, Kuminga, Wiggins kind of fusion that's looked pretty good. I think there's a chance of a trade, maybe a pretty good chance of a trade. I don't think it's as major as they were looking at a few weeks ago. I think they were going to, a few weeks ago, they were ready to trade Wiggins for almost anything. But things change, right? You have to judge what you've seen recently. That's what you got to judge things by. Wiggins has played better. I don't think they trade Wiggins just to trade him anymore. I think they were ready to do that a couple weeks ago because you couldn't play him with Kuminga. And if you can't play him with Kuminga, you must play Kuminga. But now that you can play them together, I can see them going through this maybe with a minor move here or there, nothing major. We'll see. If they get a great offer, they'll do it. But they're not trading Kuminga. And I don't think they've got great offers for anybody else on the roster. They're not trading Curry. So I don't see the major move right now that I was thinking a few weeks ago. But again, that was a few weeks ago. Their games were played. Lineups were shuffled. I think the commitment to Kuminga kind of has settled that down right now. It could change again, in a few days. But at this point, I wouldn't imagine a super busy trade deadline for the Warriors. But we'll see.
Always great to have you, my friend. Thank you so much for doing it.
Yeah, guys, anytime.
All right, there it is. Tim Kawakami, the TK Pod, part of the Odyssey family, The Athletic, joining us here on Willard and Dibs.